So, following on from last week, where somebody said you very much looked like Crazy Chrissy from DR and Quinch, you're kind of cycling back round to the Tank Girl thing because you've been to these are like a thrift store or comic book store where you've picked these up.
Okay. Look at how beautiful these are. Ah!
For those listening, not watching,
Ah!
Chloe is fanning a selection of Deadline magazine from the 1980s.
I got 5 of them, and I'm now, I think, 3 issues away from collecting the first 2 years. Um, and I'm reeling. I saw these on it was a comic swap that happens twice a year here in Portland, and there was a guy who just had a stack of them, and I basically started weeping. We're talking like Sally Fields and Steel Magnolias, like, "Ah!" Like, completely dying over this, and he was like, "I mean, why don't you just take the lot? I'll make you a deal." And I was like, "Oh my god, this is the best thing." Yeah, so I've been poring over those because anybody who has ever talked to me longer than 10 minutes knows that deadline is one of the things that, drives me as far as, like, creativity and stuff like that, but also, I busted open the first page, and for those who can't see, there's a little tank girl right here, and just I'm feeling it. I'm feeling it. I'm in my
Genuinely
element.
uncanny. I mean, can it be much longer before you're driving a tank around? But welcome, Earthlets, to In Orbit every Wednesday.
Get 2000 AD now. Get.
Ooh, I managed to make my mouth freakishly far away from the center of my head.
You also are a cartoon.
It shouldn't be. Well, I mean, I've said it before in the podcast. I've turned into a Brett Ewins character with like the like a Johnny Nemo hair to the side, shaved on the sides of the head.
We can only hope that your hair goes white. Ugh.
I'm afraid
Ah.
I will lose it before that point. Oh, it's literally all white around the sides now. Anyway, Borak Thung Earthlets, welcome to In Orbit every Wednesday. We are your hosts, Molch-R and KLO-E, and another week of thrill power. It's Prog Day, huzzah!
Frog Day.
It is Prog 24/24, but not only that, it's a magazine week as well.
It is. It
Um,
is.
but
Always an extra thrill.
I mean, so much thrill, 132 pages of thrill. Um, but it's delayed gratification for the Meg because we're not going to talk about the Judge Dredd magazine this week. We're going to talk about it next week because fingers crossed, touch wood, our guest is going to be Jonathan L. Howard, who is not only the writer of the Atomfall game that's about to come out from Rebellion, but is also the writer of the Atomfall tie-in comic, which debuts in this issue of the magazine. So
Woo.
I thought it'd be better off talking about the Meg with him in the room. So yeah,
Yeah.
that'll be fingers crossed.
And
That'll
also,
be
we
next
just
week.
like to keep y'all on your toes.
Oh, very much so, very much so. Um, but yeah, 2424. We've got the penultimate episode of quite a few things actually. JoJo the Shift, Full Tilt Boogie, Portals and Black Goo, and a one-off New Earth Tales by Gordon Rennie and Mike Walters.
I need to pause you for a second
Oh, go on,
because
yeah.
I am obsessed with the way you say boogie. Boogie? Boogie. What?
Yes, sorry, I shouldn't have to explain the English language to you. It's got two O's in it, so it's boogie.
I I don't actually have a comeback for that. I'm just it's another one of those things where I'm like, "Boogie, it's boogie." But also you're right, it should be boogie. We
Yeah,
just
B
continually
double
are
O.
messing up.
What does it go say?
This is aluminum all over again.
No, no, that's different because you Americans spell it differently, don't they?
Yeah, wasn't it like it got misprinted in a newspaper or something like that, and then everybody messed it up?
Who knows?
That seems on brand. Anyway, I'm sorry, go on. Penultimate things.
Proceed. So yes, another action-packed prog. One thing that is in this prog, which I'm very excited about, is a little Thrills of the Future segment in the Nerve Center. The Out Book 5 is on its way, Earthlets. Prepare yourselves
Thank God.
for the glory of the return of Dan Abnett and Mark Harrison's. I mean, just how to describe the Out? It's a revelation.
Yeah. I mean, we
And
we we and we have gone over the how good the Out is a couple of times now, and man, I'm really looking forward to going over how good it is again. Evergreen, always
yeah,
good.
I'm very much looking forward to that. Um, just move on to this week's prog. Just read The Shift. Now, one of um, one of my earliest experiences of American comics, um, outside of like kind of bog standard superhero stuff that was reprinted in like the back of Transformers or
Mhm,
anything like that, was Alan Moore's Swamp Thing.
mhm.
And there's one particular episode where oh, I've forgotten his name now. The bad guy, the bad creature in his one.
You can do it.
And yet I fail. The bad guy in the story is like emanating out evil that's kind of
Mhm,
infecting people. And there's this opening of this episode. I'm pretty sure it's Alan's run where like and it was horrific to me as a child. This kind of all these human beings being negatively influenced by this evil energy that's kind of spreading,
mhm.
and like you know, um, uh, uh, a woman looks up at her disabled twin sister and feeling resentful of everything that she's had to do for her, and there's knitting needles in her hand,
Yeah.
and a kid sets fire to something, and it's basically all just that notion of like your worst thoughts become manifest.
Oh, the idea of dream come reality is just the worst thing.
Yeah,
I
yeah,
mean, that's
yeah.
basically what insanity is. So,
And it was what made it so effective. So I was always struck by this opening, and huge kind of memories evoked of that by the opening of this episode of
I
The
can
Shift,
definitely see
where
that.
it's the same kind of principle. I don't know if that's an influence or what, but it's handled really nicely. Um, Go on, you were
The
about to say something.
the, I actually I really liked this one simply
Mm.
because I have an aversion to anything to do with eyes. So, and like I'm a horror fanatic. That's
Mm.
kind of my jam, and I specifically like body horror, really gruesome stuff. Like anything that is just genuinely disgusting is absolutely my jam. Like I watch David Cronenberg movies on a regular. I watch Sallow as a comfort film. Like there's so many things that I enjoy that are really horrific, but anything that has to do with eyes, and so like all these horrible things being like, we'll just take your eyes, we'll take your eyes from you, you'll be free of sin, and I'm like, no, I'm good with that. The idea of an eye being plucked out, ugh, no thank you. I'm
We're
so
currently sort of maybe halfway to our rewatch of the original CSI, um, which is just bloody ridiculous. The entire thing is just so silly, and watching it like 20 years hence,
yeah.
um, it, it it just strikes you how daft it is, the impact it had, how daft that is. Like juries being contaminated by what they'd seen on, asking why jackets hadn't been tested for DNA. It takes 6 months.
Mhm.
It doesn't take an afternoon. Um, but what we realized fairly quickly is we can't watch it while we're having lunch.
Really?
Yeah, 'cause it's so gross, and there's a lot of eye stuff. They really lean into the eye stuff in
No,
awful,
no, no.
awful.
I'm good.
Um, but yes, lots of delicious body horror in the shift. Um, and also in Portals and Black Goo. I'm just flicking through it on my tablet. Also in Full Tilt Boogie.
Yeah. This was,
Um,
this was this was a lot.
yeah,
This is very intense
I
prog.
mean, this is the body horror issue, really, isn't it? Because I do want to focus on the New Earth War Tales
Please
uh,
do.
with Gordon Rennie and Mike Walters, Matt Soff on colors, and Jim Campbell on letters. Because obviously, there's going to be a lot of Rogue Trooper in the future. There's been with
"Oh, no, we're
the
so upset," said nobody.
you'd be surprised. With the movie coming out next year, which we're very much looking forward to. Um, uh, I'm, it's one of those things with Rogue Trooper. I know, and I agree with very much that when he caught the traitor general, which had been the motivating factor behind the 2 or 3 years of the existence of the strip,
Mhm.
that it robbed it of something. Absolutely, I wholeheartedly agree. But I've never thought that therefore means there's no stories on New Earth. No more stories on New Earth to tell. No more stories with
Yeah.
the Road Trooper to tell. And so it's really nice because I think there's a new series that starts next week. Like a multi-part series, but with this one-off, I just like these kind of little just vignettes
I do
of
too.
New Earth.
I do too, and, I feel like the little kind of one-offs that you get of things like Rogue Trooper, also are a great, what's the words that I'm looking for? We're both really on top of it today. The I think that it's great because little one-offs of Rogue Trooper give you a chance to really see Rogue Trooper as a story about that is incredibly sad. It's incredibly sad, and it's an incredibly sad story about humanity. Like, and like, this one kinda broke my heart, and it's not like it's anything necessary like, it's no necessarily new concept behind it, but it does put it under a microscope, like the mentality of the strip under a microscope in a way that just kinda makes me go, "Oh, no. This is sad."
Yeah, it's and it's all Road Trooper stories are all the more effective for it as well.
Yes, very much.
I never fully sat with personally with the comedic elements in
Mm-mm.
the early strip. I totally understand why they were there, but they were never my favorites. Um, but yeah, stories like the Marauders and things like that were always fantastic.
Yeah.
But yeah, it just it's a bit of a kind of horror slash sad prog.
Yeah.
And
It's
and I
really sad.
I think we can't dwell on this. The world is sad enough. Great prog, no criticism of that, no shade whatsoever.
But the thing is, this is also an example because now, especially with us doing this podcast, I'm just going back and, like, picking a random prog to read, right? And it's great. I'm having a really fun time just kinda, like, jumping all over the place. And my theory is that the progs are at their best when they are one of 2 polar opposites. So, it's either completely horrific and very, very, like, intense and almost kinda serious, or when it is goofy as hell. When it's just straight up goofy. So, it has and there are little, like, spots within the prog's history where it does kind of feel like it shifts from one to the other. Um, and seemingly but seamlessly out of nowhere. Um, do you have a favorite well, we're gonna lighten the mood. We're gonna lighten the mood. Like, do you have a favorite funny 2000 AD strip?
Yeah, Hooligan's Haircut,
That's one of mine too.
which, and funnily enough, considering that we started this episode with you holding up Deadline, magazine,
Um, I've
Hu
also
oh, go on. Of course, the best of
yeah.
2000 AD.
Oh, Best of
Um,
2000 AD, which has Hooligan's haircut in it.
what volume is that, by the way?
This is 4.
Volume 4 of Best of 2000 AD. So, make sure you go out and get that, Earthlets,
Yeah,
if you've
and
not experienced the
you
delight
should
of Hooligan's
especially
Haircut.
do it because somebody wrote a thing about it.
Who I don't recognize that name. Who's that?
Shh. It's me. Yes,
It's you.
but
It's you.
yeah, Hooligan's haircut's brilliant.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah,
so
yeah.
good.
And it's one of those moments when, the 'cause I mean, the prog has been going for what, 48 years now.
Yep.
And there's been various times when, it's been challenged by a competitor, when, cultural mores have changed. And you actually always find that the even in its darkest days, the 2000 AD will quite often step up to the plate
Mhm.
when people discount it. And one of the great challenges was, of course, Deadline magazine and
Yes.
the mature comics boom of the 80s and early 90s. Um, and funny enough, this Saturday, we'll be broadcasting our mega interview with Simon Bisley, where we talk about slaying the horned god, which is
It's
exactly
very
one of the,
special.
well, very, dear God Almighty, like we're talking over a motorbike in the studio. Like I have to lean like this,
That's
but
very on brand. So,
yeah, that's one of the times that the prog has kind of stepped up to the moment. Hooligan's Haircut for me is also one of those times when and it was Peter Milligan and Jamie Hewlett. Jamie Hewlett had obviously been heavily involved in Deadline to Tank Girl,
yeah.
bringing that kind of anarchic humor and surrealist humor, and that's the humor that I like in 2000 AD is when it's
Mhm.
properly surreal, when it's
Yep.
just a little bit weird. So I mean, Peter Milligan's a past master at it because you've got oh my God, what is wrong with my head?
I wish I could finish your sentence for you.
The Willendens, the short ones about being my brain is screaming uh really and truly at me, but it's not. Sooner or later. There we go.
I love Sooner or Later. I love Really and Truly too, though.
Well, yes, that's a different flavor
Yes.
of odd. But uh 2000 AD madcap surrealist humor is always best when it's slightly leavened with a little bit of threat. I mean, talking about really and truly, of course, Ryan Hughes did the Tales from Beyond Science with Mark
There you
Miller
go.
and John Smith and Alan McKenzie, and that again for me, those were hilarious. Talking about
Mhm.
people's eyes being plucked out, and also, I love the guy whose eyes were plucked out and his nipples open as giant eyes.
As you do.
Fantastic. For me, as a teenager, that was horrific and hilarious at the same time. But come back to Hewlin's Haircut. Yeah, it's the surreal. It's the madcap, the odd. So even something like, and I've mentioned this before, and the campaign for a reprint continues. Ace Trucking Company is
Mm.
just daft. It's so
It's so
silly,
it's so ridiculous.
but it works because it's Massimo Ballardinelli.
Yeah.
So, it doesn't matter that John and Alan were just being silly.
Well, and I almost like that better, that it looks the way that it looks, and it's just so goofy.
Yeah,
It is so unserious.
yeah. I mean, aside from Hoonigan's Haircut, what's one of your choices?
Well, I know that you said that, kind of with the absurdity comes a seriousness that also kind of builds it up. I'm gonna
Yeah.
give you a counterpoint, and that is Al's Baby, which which to this day might actually be one of my favorite comedy strips that I have ever read, period. I like that reading coming across that story was like part of the reason why I am still raging against the machine that John Wagner has not been put in the Eisner Hall of Fame yet, because like it's just me submitting paperwork to Jackie every year being like, "But Al's Baby." Because like that is who thinks like that? Who comes up with that? John, if you're listening to this, I love you to pieces. And what the hell
What is
happened?
wrong with you, man?
Like, it's such a good strip, and of course, it has, Carlos, drawing it, so it's immaculate. It's
There may be people listening to this or watching this who don't know what Al's Baby is, and I wanna hear you explain it.
okay. Am I allowed to can I just we're running out of time. Can I just say
No, no,
"Mpreg
no, no, we're not.
Mobster"?
We're not.
Like
You have to explain it.
okay, so there is, of course, a mobster named Al Bastardi, who is very stereotypical, like, Italian mobster, very, very good fellas, very like all this sort of stuff. And he's married to the mob boss's daughter, who does not want to have children, but the mob boss is really campaigning for the family lineage to live on and the mob to live on. And so Al's solution to spare his really awful wife and his extra awful father-in-law is to harness this new technology where men can carry babies. And then the strip just carries on with a pregnant man who is also a mobster and has a little rat man crony following him around going, "Oh, boss, remember to take your prenatals." Like, it's I could not come up with this in a fever dream. It's perfect. I was like, "It's The Sopranos. It's Mpreg porn. It's both. We're here, and I get to read this in real life. What a beautiful world this truly can be." But yes, it's a mobster story with a pregnant mobster, and it's so dumb.
Well, you know what? It's one of the things we used to notice when we did the American conventions, when we were arranging the stock, we'd always include one copy of Al's Baby, just because it's so mad.
Why don't I
Um,
have one?
well, I don't know. Why don't you have one?
Go on. Continue your story.
Um, but it would sit on the table, and the sheer number of people who would see it, and for those who haven't seen it, the cover was a riff off the, and again, I've shown my age here. There was a classic magazine cover of Demi Moore, heavily pregnant, and it was in the 90s, and it was like this shocking a pregnant naked woman on the cover. Was it Vogue or something like that? I can't remember.
It
Um,
was something like that. Please put the image over
yeah,
here because
okay,
I
all right.
it's such a good cover.
And Carlos, I mean, uh, for all of his incredible line work, Carlos was an incredible painter.
Yeah.
And there was that phase in the 90s from Necropolis through to when he started toying with computer colors, when he did an awful lot of painting. And the cover for Al's Baby was beautifully painted, but it shows this naked mobster,
Beautiful.
heavily pregnant, wielding a massive gun. Um, and we just really enjoyed the reaction to people. Like all the double takes, like all the spit takes, as people went past it, and it kind of lodged in their brain. They were like, "Oh man," but then they'd flick through it and put it down because it would just be too weird, too weird for Americans. There we go.
I that's never. You would not me. I would have been frothing at the mouth.
I'm
Like,
I don't wanna cast any aspersions, but no, I'm not going to. I'm
oh,
not going to.
please, please.
I'm just gonna let the audience draw their own conclusions from that.
The
Um,
just being passive aggressively rude right into the I think what I like about it too is because, like, when so many people think of, like, the dynamic duo of Carlos and John,
mm.
they don't think of a strip like this at all.
Wait, and this is a really key point and I've said this before on the show that John Wagner's humor is always quite grim. He can be very mischievous, but it's always quite grim. The It was the partnership with him and Alan that brought out this silliness.
Yes.
And you see it emerge in their writing when they team up for the first time, and then you kind of get further and further along that track. Um, and I think that's one of the reasons why the greatest writing partnership in all of comics is
Yeah.
because they can do like the grim epics, the dark stuff, but then they can also do this ridiculous. And the Bogeyman,
Oh, yeah.
the series that they
One of the
co-created
best.
with Robin Smith, um, that's very much the kind of melding of these two different writers, and their divergent interests, but also the clearly what was the basis of their friendship, which was having a laugh.
Yeah. Which is so
Yeah,
beautiful,
yeah,
and it comes out, and it makes something that is, like, long-lasting entertainment, and
yeah.
I just think that's beautiful.
When
The
when oh, go on.
No, I lost it, go on.
Oh, oh, we really are in need of an upgrade this week. No, I was going to say if anyone listening has not heard the tribute episode that we did to Alan Grant when he rather awfully passed away a few years ago, it included a never before heard interview that we it was the pandemic. We were running on Zoom. It wasn't really working. There was too much of a delay. So but there were one or two gems in that, and I think there was mention in that of when they lived in this weird apartment in Dundee or somewhere like that, and they had no money, so their only entertainment was playing cards. And one of the things that if you lost cards, you had to go to the corner shop and buy a tin of chickpeas. And in hindsight, I think they were both like, "Why did we do that?"
Yeah.
For me, it just kind of gave that sense of these two friends who
Yeah.
used to like mocking one another and laughing at other people's expense and all this, and it brought their friendship alive in just this away from the work.
Yes.
It showed the foundation of their friendship. Um,
Oh, okay, I did remember one thing.
okay, go on.
Cool, it happened. Um, the so one thing that I will say, and I've always kind of gotten a laugh out of having to have this conversation about John Wagner stories. I'm like, there are a lot of Wagner stories that do not necessarily hold up to cultural sensitivities. And I make the argument that almost all of them, in particular Al's Baby, you aren't even paying attention to that part because it is such a situational comedy that you completely jump over and forego, like, this argument for, like, well, that's culturally insensitive now. And that's a whole other conversation, which I do think that we should have because that would be really interesting. But, yeah, Al's Baby is this thing where, like, by today's standards, is probably not even all that off base, I guess. But at the same time, it is so goofy that you don't even really take that into consideration in the way that you kind of have to do with so many comics now, because you're so busy having a laugh.
You are right, and it to a certain extent it's because it actually plays the comedy straight. Like
Yeah.
it's not trying to be they're not trying to be shock jocks, they're not trying to be offensive. That's just there's just this ridiculous notion, and it's the way that's the situation of the story, and so the comedy springs from that, and also your own perceptions of gender and gender relationships and things, and I think it is one of those strips where you could probably find some way to say that you definitely could find some way to say that it's perhaps insensitive, but the way that it
Well,
carries
I've
itself, the
seen
way
people
that it
make
moves
that comment
forward.
before.
Say again?
I've seen people make that comment before when, like, introducing them to it, and I'm like, "Okay, first of all, this story came out a very long time ago. Second of all, how you can possibly focus on that when when it when it is also a mobster story at the same while someone is dealing with morning sickness is beyond me."
Yeah, absolutely, and I think it's in the old. It probably is in the Ultimate Collection, but if not, then you can get it digitally from the 2000 AD app. So we've told you just some of our favorite humor stories from 2000 AD, but
Only
what are
2.
yours? What are yours, Earthlets? Let us know in the comments on Facebook and YouTube and on Blue Sky, Twitter if you feel like it. And if you want to get in touch direct, it's thrillcast, all one word, at 2000 AD. Thrillcast at 2000ad.com. Oh dear, we're broken.
It's gonna be fine.
We have run out of time now. So we're going to have to say goodbye for another week. But yes, Prog 2424 is out now from all good providers of Thrill, Power, and the 2080 app. And next week, we will be talking about Judge Dredd Magazine 478, fingers crossed, with Jonathan Howard. Yeah, fantastic, wonderful. Thank you for joining us. We'll be on. You know what? We'll be on point next week. We'll be on point next week. We're
We'll
gonna.
get there. We need tune-ups.
I spent the weekend in the garden, so I'm just knackered. I'm so sorry. I'm old.
I don't have an excuse. You're welcome, everybody.
Well, Squad 6 Argo, this has been In Orbit Every Wednesday. I am Molch-R. She is Chloe. And until next time, Splundig Verthrig.
See you next week.
Get 2000 AD now. Get.
Well, thanks for joining us on In Orbit Every Wednesday, Earthlets. Make sure you like and subscribe and go along to 2000 AD, where you'll be able to subscribe to 2000 AD and the Judge Dredd magazine. Sign up to our newsletter and you'll get hundreds of pages of free comics to download. And download the app for your Apple and Android devices. Now, don't forget, Earthlets, this is the 2000 AD universe. We just live in it.